निर्मलं श्रीगुरुं वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं चाग्रजातं सहगना रघुनाथान्वितं त्वं सजीवम् साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्ण चैतन्यदेवम् श्रीराधा कृष्णपदां सगण ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानन्द श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासदि गौरभक्तवृन्द श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानन्द श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासदि गौरभक्तवृन्द श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानन्द श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासदि गौरभक्तवृन्द
Thank you. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yasodhanandana Braja Janaranjana Yasodhanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yasodhanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Jnanatirmiyandasya Gananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Militanyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanyan Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutaye Swayam Rupa Kadadmayam Dadatisva Padantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadutam Harijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishubhanu Sutadevi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpa Tarubhascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And before I begin speaking, I would like to seek the blessings of all the devotees who are assembled and also listening online. Today we're reading from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 5, text 25, and also text 26. So this is the Sanskrit for 5:25. Labante Brahma Nirvanam Rishya Krishna Kalmasaha Chinna Dev Vedha Yata Mana Sarva Bhuta Hite Rataha. Labante Brahma Nirvanam Rishya Krishna Kalmasaha Chinna Vedha Yatat Mana Sarva Bhuta Hite Rataha. Those who are beyond the dualities that arise from doubts, whose minds are engaged within, who are always busy working for the welfare of all living beings, and who are free from all sins, achieve liberation in the Supreme. So I'll repeat the translation one more time. Those who are beyond the dualities that arise from doubts, whose minds are engaged within, who are always busy working for the welfare of all living beings, and who are free from all sins, achieve liberation in the Supreme. And the purport. Only a person who is fully in Krishna consciousness can be said to be engaged in welfare work for all living entities. When a person is actually in the knowledge that Krishna is the fountainhead of everything, then when he acts in that spirit, he acts for everyone. The sufferings of humanity are due to forgetfulness of Krishna as the supreme enjoyer, the supreme proprietor, and the supreme friend. Therefore, to act to revive this consciousness within the entire human society is the highest welfare work. One cannot be engaged in such first-class welfare work without being liberated in the Supreme. A Krishna-conscious person has no doubt about the supremacy of Krishna. He has no doubt because he is completely freed from all sins. This is the state of divine love. A person engaged only in ministering to the physical welfare of human society cannot factually help anyone. Temporary relief of the external body and the mind is not satisfactory. The real cause of one's difficulties in the hard struggle for life may be found in one's forgetfulness of his relationship with the Supreme Lord. When a man is fully conscious of his relationship with Krishna, he is actually a liberated soul, although he may be in the material tabernacle. And text, chapter 5, text 26, and the Sanskrit. Kama krodha vimuktanam yatinam yatachetasam abhito brahma nirvanam vartate vidatatmanam. Kama krodha vimuktanam yatinam yatachetasam abhito brahma nirvanam vartate viditatmanam. And the translation. Those who are free from anger and all material desires, who are self-realized, self-disciplined, and constantly endeavoring for perfection, are assured of liberation in the Supreme in the very near future. So, those who are free from anger and all material desires, who are self-realized, self-disciplined, and constantly endeavoring for perfection, are assured of liberation in the Supreme in the very near future. And the purport. Of the saintly persons who are constantly engaged in striving towards salvation, one who is in Krishna consciousness is the best of all. The Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 22, Text 39 confirms this fact as follows. Yat pada pankaja palasa vilasa bhaktya karmasayam gratitam udgrate yanti santaha tadvamna rikta mateo yatayo pirodha sroto ganastam aranam bhaja vasudevam. Just try to worship in devotional service Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even great sages are not able to control the forces of the senses as effectively as those who are engaged in transcendental bliss by serving the lotus feet of the Lord, uprooting the deep-grown desire for fruit of the activities. In the conditioned soul, the desire to enjoy the fruit of results of work is so deep-rooted that it is very difficult, even for great sages, to control such desires, despite great endeavors. A devotee of the Lord constantly engaged in devotional service in Krishna consciousness, perfect in self-realization, very quickly attains liberation from the Supreme. Owing to his complete knowledge and self-realization, he always remains in trance. To cite an analogous example of this, Darsanya dhyana samsparser matsya kurma vihangamaha svanya patyani pusnanti tataham api padmaja. By vision, by meditation, and by touch only do the fish, the tortoise, and the birds maintain their offspring. Similarly do I also, O Padmaja. The fish brings up its offspring simply by looking at them. The tortoise brings up its offspring simply by meditation. The eggs of the tortoise are laid on land, and the tortoise meditates on the eggs while in the water. Similarly, the devotee in Krishna consciousness, although far away from the Lord's abode, can elevate himself to that abode simply by thinking of him constantly. By engagement in Krishna consciousness, he does not feel the pangs of material miseries. This state of life is called Brahma Nirvana, or the absence of material miseries, due to being constantly immersed in the Supreme. So this is basically talking about in terms of one achieving liberation, and it's also yes, it's also speaking as well about how to actually achieve liberation and what are the actual qualifications. So ultimately, for one to actually come to this state which is mentioned, it says, those who are beyond the dualities that arise from doubts, whose minds are engaged within, who are always busy working for the welfare of all living beings, and are free from all sins, achieve liberation in the Supreme. But it's not necessarily speaking about bhakti. As ones who are actually have these qualities may be actual following a different process, but they may actually achieve in terms of impersonal Brahman realization. But in terms of the if we take the Supreme as an actual personality of Godhead, so then those who are actually in bhakti, they're the ones who are fully free from ever actually having to take birth again. As it was mentioned in the previous class, that those who are, they may be free from all material attachment, but even if they just due to offenses, previous offenses, they may have the wrong conception of the Supreme, which they will have to rectify. So for one to actually attain these qualities, to become free of anger and doubt, one has to actually first of all come to the mode of goodness and practice the process of devotional service. So they have to practice the four regulative principles, chant the prescribed rounds, and ultimately follow the instructions of the spiritual master. So it's mentioned that those dualities arise from doubts. So in terms of these doubts, what's very important is to have faith. So initially there's faith, which is called Shraddha. So this is initially how we may come to Krishna consciousness, that we have this faith. But we have this faith, and then it's mentioned about the association of the devotees. And it's mentioned that faith is an ongoing process. So this faith isn't necessarily the fixed faith. That comes later actually. So it's only by the mercy of the devotees and based on one's previous pious activities, they become purified and actually eligible to obtain bhakti and service. So bhakti is what is the actual one who is in bhakti is considered liberated. So when one gets the association of the devotees and they perform their sadhana and all these, and then automatically as time goes on, their anarthas get cleansed. So this is called anartha nivritti. But then when one gets to a deeper faith, that is when they come to the state of nishtha. So that's when they're fully steady in Krishna consciousness, and there's no doubts. One is very much fixed. And then it goes on and on further that one isn't just fixed, but naturally one begins to develop taste. So this is called ruchi. so one develops taste for the spiritual things. So it's not that they're past the struggle actually. It's just a spiritual hankering which you have. So they're completely they want to just engage in spiritual activities. And then beyond that is a Shakti. So a Shakti is when they have the taste, but then they develop the attachment specifically for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And from there, one goes deeper in the relationship. And then the next stage is Bhava, which is the ecstatic emotions which are felt. And then beyond this is Prema, and then that's when one they achieve the love of Godhead actually. So in terms of coming to the mode of goodness, it's mentioned about certain austerities also that we have to perform, which will aid us and are essential. So it's mentioned in chapter 17, all the way through from text 14 to text 17. It's mentioned about the austerity of the body and the austerity of speech and also the austerity of the mind. So the austerity of the body consists in worship of the Supreme Lord. The Brahmanas, the spiritual master and superiors like the father and mother, and in cleanliness, simplicity, celibacy, and non-violence. And so, and Srila Prabhupada he mentions about it being like a so-called renunciation. So when one is in this stage, as they develop attachment, that renunciation is, he says, so-called because it's not really renunciation if one has attachment. It's a natural inclination. So it's also mentioned about austerity of speech. So austerity of speech consists in speaking words that are truthful, pleasing, beneficial, and not agitating to others, and also in regularly reciting Vedic literature. So and then in terms of the mind, it says satisfaction, simplicity, gravity, self-control, and purification of one's existence are the austerities of the mind. So this is very important. So to be completely satisfied with whatever Krishna gives us is very much renunciation. And also simplicity, it requires a lot of practice. So to actually see everything as Krishna's mercy, to just be simple and think of Krishna, it's what we all are striving for. And we have to have, as it mentions, gravity. So we have to be sober. Realize how the proper perspective of Krishna consciousness, and to take that very seriously. It was mentioned that Srila Prabhupada, when he was in Vrindavan, he became ill, and he was very sick, so much so that it was for the second time that the devotees asked all other devotees all around the world to start praying for Srila Prabhupada throughout the day and the night. And furthermore, what Srila Prabhupada said really showed the gravity of the situation. He said that the reason he was ill was because he was taking on the karma of his disciples. And he said at the time 80% of the leaders of ISKCON were not following properly, which was causing him, due to their mistakes, he was taking on a lot of karma. So this really, of course, this was by the will of Krishna, and it was said that sometimes this can happen just for the to really emphasize this point to the disciple, that the gravity of the situation is that they have to really take it seriously, not to be whimsical, because there's always going to be consequences. So, and of course, another austerity of the mind is self-control. So this naturally comes by practicing Krishna consciousness. Sarvapadi vinirmuktam tatparatnena nirmalam rishikesha rishikena sevanam bhaktiruchyate. So when one practices devotional service, it says there are two consequences: that one becomes free from all material designations, and that one's senses become purified. So naturally one will develop self-control. So it's considered when we engage our senses in Krishna's service, it's considered that our senses are purified. And of course, this means that we have to take only what is necessary. It's mentioned that one will actually have to eat only what is necessary to maintain good health, and everything has to be geared towards Krishna's service in that sense. And then purification of one's existence. So this is a very important point also. It's mentioned also that in the Srimad Bhagavatam, that no matter what one's occupational duty is, if it's engaged in fruitive activity, it's only so much useless labor. But one has to actually work in such a manner that it will provoke attraction for the message of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, if this was to happen, as Srila Prabhupada mentioned, it will create such a big difference in the world, where people will become much more responsible, and it will be much more more peaceful, tranquil atmosphere, where one is not focused on selfish nature, but on pleasing Krishna, which is a selfless nature. So it says, this threefold austerity performed with transcendental faith by men, not expecting material benefits, but engaged only for the sake of the Supreme, is called austerity and goodness. So, transcendental faith. So it has to be unflinching faith. And when one is on this stage of goodness, naturally they will carry on to transcend. It's mentioned in chapter 18, the text 49, which is the conclusion, the perfection of renunciation. Asakta buddhi sarvatra jivtatma vigata spriyaha nishkarmya siddhim paramam sanyasena digachati. One can attain the results of renunciation simply by self-control and becoming unattached to material things and disregarding material enjoyments. This is the highest perfectional stage of renunciation. Real renunciation means that one should always think himself part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, he has no right to enjoy the results of his work. Since he is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, the results of his work must be enjoyed by the Supreme Lord. This is actually Krishna consciousness. The person acting in Krishna consciousness is really a sannyasi, one in the renounced order of life. By such mentality, one is satisfied because he is actually acting for the Supreme. Thus he is not attached to anything material. He becomes accustomed to not taking pleasure in anything beyond the transcendental happiness derived from the service of the Lord. A sannyasi is supposed to be free from the reactions of his past activities. But a person who is in Krishna consciousness automatically attains this perfection without even accepting the so-called order of renunciation. This state of mind is called Yoga Ruddha, or the perfectional stage of yoga, as confirmed in the 3rd chapter, Yasvatma Ratir Evasyat. One who is satisfied in himself has no fear of any kind of reaction from his activity. So it's mentioning that no matter what varna one is in, the goal is to ultimately become Krishna conscious. So I'm just going to read the purport of this verse, which speaks about the occupation activities. So the translation is, the occupation activities a man performs according to his own position are only so much useless labor if they do not provoke attraction for the message of the personality of Godhead. There are different occupational activities in terms of man's different conceptions of life. To the gross materialists, who cannot see anything beyond the gross material body, there is nothing beyond the senses. Therefore his occupational activities are limited to concentrated and extended selfishness. Concentrated selfishness centers around the personal body. This is generally seen amongst the lower animals. Extended selfishness is manifest in human society and centers around the family, society, community, nation, and world with a view to gross bodily comfort. So this is also the same as mentioned, the 5 levels of consciousness. So this is in the lower animals practically is Anamaya, and then Pranamaya, and then Jnanamaya is when, as it says, above the gross materialists are the mental speculators who hover aloft in the mental spheres, and their occupational duties involve making poetry and philosophy or propagating some ism with the same aim of selfishness, limited to the body and the mind. But above the body and the mind is a dormant spirit soul, whose absence from the body makes the whole range of bodily and mental selfishness completely null and void. So this is Vijnanamaya. It's yes, when in terms of one realizes Brahman. So this is the difference between spirit and matter. So this is real intelligence. And then beyond that, it's when naturally when one develops become self-realized about their true identity. It's called Brahma Bhuta, and then they engage in the devotional service. But it says, but less intelligent people have no information of the needs of the spirit soul. Because foolish people have no information of the soul and how it is beyond the purview of the body and mind, they are not satisfied in performance of their occupational duties. The question of the satisfaction of the self is raised herein. The self is beyond the gross body and subtle mind. He is the potent active principle of the body and mind. Without knowing the need of the dormant soul, one cannot be happy simply with the emolument of the body and mind. The body and the mind are but superfluous outer coverings of the spirit soul. The spirit soul's needs must be filled. So, I just want to ask if there's any questions. Yes. 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 So I'll just repeat the question that the needs of the soul can be hard to detect, and if there is anything more specific or general than that we can actually how we can detect that. So I spoke earlier actually about strata and the stages to devotional service. So one, due to their pious activities and the mercy of the devotees, they come to the platform of bhakti. And then there's this initial strata, which they have an initial faith. It's not like the full fixed faith, and faith can ever change. So from here they will begin bhajana kriya and practice in the process, and they will still have faith as well that they're going, they will have faith that they're going in the right direction. They will see, but they'll have, of course, many questions and not firm faith. So, in terms of, one may as philosophically know, they will philosophically have conceptualized everything and know what it is, but as you said, it can be hard to detect within oneself which is the soul or the mind, or yes. So it's something that I've actually realized a lot myself as well, that some things we may philosophically realize it, and we may think this is a realization, but it's very hard to see, because even though we're very sure we have understood something, only until it's fully purified within us can we actually realize it, and we can actually imbibe it, is what I've understood. That's why I think as well that the anarta nivritti stage then will come, and that we're always getting purified to a certain degree in devotional service, but naturally when we're finished anarta nivritti, it's said that we're maybe, I think it's 75% of our anartas are nullified at that stage, and I believe that these anartas as well are misconceptions as well about material existence and attachments and general misconceptions about material life. It's purification, and then when one comes to the stage of nishta, that's when they have the full faith, and I believe when they have that full faith, it's It's interactual, who they are, and there's no doubt about that. So I believe when one has full faith, they're beyond any doubt about which is the mind and which is the soul, that they know which is which at that stage. That's my understanding. But if there's any rectifications or any, if you've any insight yourself, please share. Yes. 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 Ye- yes. Yes. I think is what came to mind also is about like Vedi sadhana bhakti as well. It's the same on the same lines that we have faith as well, and it's the same thing that we follow completely everything, and then when it becomes more spontaneous is when one is fully has that full faith, is my understanding. Yeah, but because I've actually experienced this, that even a simple thing, no matter how simple it is, like we may think it's simple, like just to have compassion or forgiveness, and we can even try and just try to to have that, but unless it's actually purified within, it's not going to leave us. That's yeah. Even if we wanted to leave us, even if we know what's the right thing to do, it still has to be purified. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Purity is the force. Yeah. Yes, thank you. Bhagavad Gita ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, all assembled devotees ki. Jai. Hari Bol.